every year. The specific days depend on your latitude of observation. So at the latitude of Chichen Itza, the Sun and the Pleiades will be aligning in the zenith only in the 21st century. So it's a precession alignment. Now, precession's a very slow phenomenon, so we can't really nail down a year, or even a decade so much with this one. But it is an eschatological sort of armature that I believe that the Maya had tuned into. What they were saying is that with this alignment, which you notice it's a precessional alignment, but it's a different type of precessional alignment compared to the December solstice sun lining up with the dark rift in the Milky Way at the galactic center. That's a different way of marking it. In fact, one is happening in one part of the sky, and one is happening near the Pleiades in the other part of the sky. So it's almost like there's this incredible galactic cosmovision that recognizes these types of precessional alignments. And for some strange reason, both of them are pointing to the 21st century as a time of great transformation.
So the Pleiades, the reason why the Maya perhaps then targeted this when they were building this pyramid is that this is involved in the alignment, or is there some other connection with the Pleiades here?
Well, I think there could be just an awareness that the Pleiades were a unique part of the sky. Generally speaking, they're roughly opposite the galactic center. And if we look at some of the traditions around, what would you call it, like esoteric traditions around the chakra system.
Sure.
The 7 chakras in the body, the spiritual centers. In my book, Galactic Alignment, I have a chapter on this, and it's somewhat speculative, but I think of the galactic center then as being equivalent to the root, or the Muladhara chakra. And then you go through discrete levels, up through the heart chakra to the Pleiades. In many esoteric traditions are associated with a higher consciousness. So it's almost then like with these alignments that are happening to the galactic center and to the Pleiades in this century, it almost gives rise to an understanding that it's somehow triggering the chakras, and that there's an awakening that's happening through these energetic alignments.
Interesting, very interesting. And I mean, even speaking about that pyramid again, the Chichen Itza, it's laid out as a calendar itself. So as far as what I've been reading about it, that it's the 4 sides as you described, and even I think the stairs actually, if you were to count them, they add up basically to one full of our years. Isn't that right?
That's right. Yes, 365 days, the 4 sides, 91 stairs on each side, and then the little the temple on the top, the 5th, the platform on the top.
Yeah.
So 365, and that is intriguing too. But it's only through the understanding of the Pleiades and Sun connection with the symbolism of the snake that one can say that the Pyramid of Kukulkan is a processional star clock in stone, and it's set on the 21st century. So that's really, there's been a revolution in understanding, say, ancient Egypt, and there's been progressive books out by pioneering researchers like by Robert Bauval, for example, showing the processional information in the Egyptian pyramids. Well, this Pyramid of Kukulkan thing is like that, and very much like that, and the evidence in the iconography is really, really striking. It actually is related to the new fire ceremony, which was the way that this was tracked. It's part of the new fire ceremony tradition that was brought to Chichen Itza by the Central Mexicans.
This was obviously a long time ago, but tell us a little bit about this, the new fire ceremony. I haven't heard about that.
Well, that is a ritual that was performed at the end of a 52-year calendar round. So it's timed with the calendar round period, and basically what was done is that at the end of the 52-year calendar round, they were watching for the Pleiades to pass through the zenith precisely at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we have recorded in the historical documents at the time of the conquest as to what the New Fire ceremony was about. Now, what the Aztecs would do, and I don't believe this really speaks to the original sort of spiritual understanding of sacrifice as a doctrine, for spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
But what the Aztecs would do, they were sort of a latter-day, more barbaric tribe that came into central Mexico. They would actually take a sacrificial victim and cut out that victim's heart with a obsidian knife, right as that movement of the Pleiades through the zenith at midnight was happening.
Yeah.
And then the blood would be, used and to burned. It was basically an offering that was used to light a new fire, and then the fire then was taken all throughout the empire to light other fires. So
yeah, this is an interesting aspect of the entire South American culture generally about the sacrifice, and my idea of it is that something happened, perhaps one of the empires took over. I don't know if it was the Aztecs or the Incas, but it feels like, I don't know if this was an ancient mythology and somehow this was literally interpreted afterwards, and this got corrupted in some way. I guess we could even tie this in together with the ball game, because I've heard that actually the winners of the ball games were sacrificed afterwards, and I don't know obviously if this is true or not, and this is might be polluted by those who actually came over there and did the conquest and all of that, and they might not have they might have that kind of interest to portray these as barbarians. I don't know. What do you make of it?
I think you're onto something there completely. I think that with the sacrifice rite or ritual, there's a spiritual wisdom inside of that. I mean, even Christianity, has its own ideas around sacrifice and so on.
Oh yeah.
I think the general idea is that spiritual insights sort of appear as a revelation from above, and it's kind of like the way that religions grow out of what were basically like a period of spiritual revelation. So at the onset or the dawn of a spiritual tradition or spiritual idea, there's kind of a pure download, and its essence is understood. So there's an essential way to understand sacrifice, and in fact, this is really the prophecy for 2012, and we can get into that later on, but because sacrifice is really important. But then what happens through the ensuing decades and centuries with the spiritual tradition is that dogmas creep in, and the original pure insight or revelation gets diluted and distorted. And then you, in the cycle of time, you go from that original inception through the whole cycle of diminishment, so that at the end of the cycle you have a literalized manifestation of the idea. In other words, that hearts are literally being torn out.
Yeah.
The original spiritual essence of the idea is forgotten, and then also at the same time you have the corruption of spiritual traditions becoming more dogmatic and setting up systems and hierarchies to control people through fear and so on.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we are now, I think.
Exactly.
We're at the end of the cycle. Everything's upside down and backwards.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. My point indeed. I'm glad you brought that up, because I did kind of want to tie that together in some way here, that it feels like we're kind of coming around the bend or around the circle, I guess, again, and we are kind of confronted with similar things, and we might end up, if we're not careful here, in some kind of a police state scenario. Who knows? But anyway.
Absolutely. That is the problem, and we're born into this sort of net of illusion that's gotten woven as we approach the end of the cycle, and and sometimes we're not even fully aware of how we are contributing to ourselves, continuing to be in the trap.
Yeah.
And what I like to talk about with the sacrifice, because it is really a central part of the Mayan prophecy for 2012, as well as the spiritual teachings, is that it's all about sacrificing our attachment to the illusions that keep us stuck to a certain plane of consciousness, which is where they want to keep us. Because if we raise our consciousness, then we might see solutions to the problems that they want to keep propagating in the world.
That's right. When you say illusion, would you care to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Oh, let's see. Well, I guess there would be the standard sort of things like that materialism is the supreme principle, and that if we buy more things, we'll be happier, things like that.
Sure.
The kind of illusions that were sold by the propaganda machine and so on.
So, speaking of 2012 and the Mayan calendar, before we run out of time in this first segment here, I want to kind of dive into this, I guess, here at this point. And again, and you mentioned it before here, that there's so many, different ideas about this, the end of the world, the end of time, the end of man's world. There's so many, prophecies, it feels like, or interpretations of the prophecies, I should say. And it's kind of difficult to root it all out, and I guess I want to hear a little bit about your theories about it all and what it might mean, even on a spiritual level, but also I guess on a materialistic level, and if there actually is something on the horizon like catastrophe, anything like this. Your thoughts on this?
Okay. Well, let's see. There's always a grain of truth in the different ideas, like the end of time, for example. I like to talk about the end of time as not a bad thing per se, because the end of time can be a spiritual experience. I mean, we might say that many mystics and saints have already been to the end of time. If we understand it in a metaphysical sense, meditators, for example, people who practice vipassana meditation, they focus on the in-breath and the out-breath, and it's that still point between the breaths that they can enter eternity, where time can stop. And that's a really, really important initiatory glimpse or experience for people on the spiritual path, experiencing no time, and eternity. Eternity is not a long period of time, it's the experience of no time. So the end of time idea, people usually have an association that it's like, catastrophe or apocalypse or something. But I think of it more in a metaphysical sense as being, a glimpse of a transcendent dimension. And that, I think that in many ways, 2012 as an archetype for spiritual awakening does represent that as an end of time thing. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of my approach to the Mayan prophecies and interpreting 2012 and so on, I mean, first of all, we have to acknowledge that with 2012, it's the perfect kind of marketer's dream, really. I mean, you've got the doomsday angle, and you've got, barbaric ancient Indians or something like that, and it's already being used and abused in this way by the mainstream media.
Sure.
I mean, I've been on History Channel and Discovery Channel and Travel Channel and so on, and usually they sort of tend to go towards that doomsday angle on it. So
yeah.
There's the carnival aspect, as my friend Jonathan Zapp says. It's going to be Carnival 2012, so we should sort of expect it. Problem is that if you're a seeker and you're wanting to, get the scoop on what it's really about, it can be hard to pierce through all this stuff. So my approach has always been to honor and respect the Maya tradition itself, and in doing so, we can actually study the Maya creation mythology, go right to the heart, go right to the primary sources. The Maya creation mythology is the place where you're going to find the prophecy for 2012,
really?
For the end of the cycle, for the end of the world age, because it's basically a world age doctrine.
And in the creation myths, do you mean that in the creation we will, as they describe as a creation, we will experience something similar again then, or?
Well, it's always about